acids, and proteins. Remember how I said we were going to break up each of those into sections and study each of them one at a time? Well, today we're going to start talking about carbohydrates. We said that carbohydrates were made of starches and sugars, and the three main elements that make up starches and sugars are oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. What kind of a molecule did we say contains carbon atoms? There were two types that we distinguished between. Okay, if you can't remember, look in your 3.1 notes. I think it was at the top of your 3.1 notes. There were two types of molecules we talked about. Which kind all contain carbon compounds? Well, organic compounds contain carbon, right. We said inorganic compounds usually don't contain carbon, except for there are a few that do, like carbon dioxide. That's not an organic compound, but it does contain carbon. If you guys want to turn your desks again. Vocabulary chart in section 3.2. Oh, yeah. So you'll need your books out, and I believe page 55 is where section 3 starts. What a carbohydrate is. Marissa? Organic compounds. Okay, they're organic compounds. What else is important that that definition says? Josh?
They're composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Right, they're composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, usually in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. And a lot of times when you see the word carbohydrate, you'll also see the word energy, because carbohydrates can supply energy. Can anybody give me an example of a carbohydrate? You may have had a class before lunch. Nathan?
Sugars, starches.
Sugars, starches, breads, grains, right. So grains or pastas. There's one specific sugar that we talked about last week a lot. That's a really good example of a carbohydrate, and that is glucose. Remember the molecular formula for glucose we did in that opening activity last week was C6H12O6. That means there are 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of oxygen, and 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 6 atoms of oxygen in a glucose molecule. Okay, so go ahead and look up saccharide. I think you're monosaccharide be the first term. Look at me what it says about monosaccharides. Jasmine, what are we?
A monomer of a carbohydrate called monosaccharide. Simple sugar, between carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, ratio 1 to 2.
Right, exactly. So, a monosaccharide, mono means one. Saccharides are basically sugars. So a monosaccharide is a simple sugar or a monomer of a carbohydrate. One example of this, I wrote this arrow so you write glucose down here again. We talked about a specific reaction last week and a little bit today, different kind of reaction, where two monomers combined to form a polymer and water. What kind of a reaction was that we talked about last week? Where two monomers, glucose and fructose, combined to form the polymer sucrose plus water. What? Right, a condensation reaction or dehydration synthesis. Those two monomers, or monosaccharides, glucose and fructose, lost the water molecule and they formed a COC bond to make sucrose plus water. That was your dehydration synthesis. Okay, go ahead and look up disaccharide. You can read me what disaccharide says. Brandon?
Monosaccharides can combine in a condensation reaction to form double sugar.
Right, so basically a disaccharide, di, that prefix means two. Two monomers come together to form a double sugar. In your example, from your dehydration synthesis reaction would be sucrose. Sucrose is a polymer that's a disaccharide. It's made up of two monosaccharides, glucose and fructose. Who can tell me what the prefix poly means? P-O-L-Y. What does that mean? April? Right, many. So a polysaccharide is a very complex sugar that's made up of 3 or more monosaccharides. And as you're going to see, most of the time polysaccharides are made up of hundreds or even thousands of monosaccharides linked together. Some examples of polysaccharides are starch and glycogen. And we're going to talk about what starches are and what glycogen is when we do your notes. But you're going to see the structure of starch and the structure of glycogen are really, really, really super long, thousands of molecules of glucose linked together. Anybody have any questions on the vocabulary? Anybody need more time with this?